When I was 17, my friends and I thought it would be a good idea to to do some mushrooms. Hmm. And at that point in my life, my friends and I we were a bunch of degenerates, you know. We were up to no good. um yeah, by this point, we worked our way up to mushrooms. It wasn't just like one night out of the blue, we're gonna do mushrooms. It was it evolved over time. Started out smoking cigarettes and then eventually graduated to doing weed, and up until that point, the night of the mushrooms, I think I might have done mushrooms before that time, one other time, because I've done mushrooms twice. And I think this was the second time I had done mushrooms. And I had also tried LSD a few times. We might have even been, because we were going to raves, and this was like in the 90s. So there was the underground scene. You know, we had done ecstasy and had done Special K, and there was always stuff around. But it was mostly just weed. We had developed quite the weed habit, and we were smoking cigarettes. We thought we were super cool, and so the night of the the mushrooms experience, that was it was never gonna go well, for me at least, because I was very sensitive to this stuff. I didn't really know any better. I was very sensitive to the drugs, and we probably took more than I should have. I took more than I should have. I don't know. I don't know how my friends handled it. I think they handled it relatively well, but for me, it led to a pretty intense, some might even call it bad trip. so so we probably got, I don't know, maybe an eighth or a quarter of mushrooms, and it was like good mushrooms, like psychedelic, um just like fuzzy white with like these bluish whitish crystals on them, and it looked like it was something out of like a magazine or like a movie. It was like you knew this stuff was potent. And I probably myself, on an empty stomach, took maybe half of an eighth, a third of an eighth. Like, I don't know, there were maybe four or five of us, and we had split a pretty big bag of it. But I mean, honestly, the exact amount's kind of irrelevant. What matters is that it was a lot for me. And so, we didn't eat anything. Some people like put the mushrooms on pizza or something. Like, no, we just chomped on these like bitter tasting mushrooms, and then, like chased it down with Coke or Pepsi or whatever. I don't know. And then we waited and waited for them to kick in. And kick in they did. I don't know how long it took. Might have been, I mean, because like this whole experience, like I just totally lost track of time. Like it started building, maybe after half an hour, it starts building and building. And, I'm starting to see these trails, kind of like with LSD, and like the colors are starting to pop. And it's almost like you can see through shit, and the stuff starts blending together and morphing before your eyes, right? And it was magical for like the first part of it. But then it got super intense super quickly for me, and I just like, it was an overload to my system and to the mind. Especially my mind freaked out. And it was like I felt like I couldn't get out of it, like I couldn't escape this new reality that had presented itself to me. and I was lost in it, and I was like looking, and I'm like, oh my god, this is too intense, and like, and then, like the fear started creeping in because it was such a shock to my mind, and I couldn't I couldn't just let the trip happen and enjoy the magical nature of it. At least for the first part, I could, but then it reached like this point of no return, and then it quickly spiraled. And so the one point, the title of this video, the one point that I remember is like somehow, it's like I think back on it, it's just fucking insane. So we were at my friend's place. He lived like in this townhouse, kind of like apartment complex thing. Okay. And we would go into his little shed. He had like this little shed, and we would do our, stuff there. We'd smoke weed, and like you could maybe fit 4 people in there, like really tight, cramped in, and like you'd open the door and you're like immediately out into the parking lot. And somehow I found my way into the parking lot, and my friends found me after I had like come out of this next part I'm going to talk. Like they found me, I was under a truck, like a Chevy Silverado or like a Ford F-150, like picture that, right? And I'm under it, looking up underneath, like looking up at it, but I'm not looking up at the truck because I'm fucking somewhere else, man. I've My consciousness has been projected out of me, and all I see is nothingness. And I have this voice playing in my head. Everything's quiet, and all I can hear is everything is nothingness. And it's just coming over and over again. Everything is nothingness. Everything is nothingness. And not only was it just this voice, it was something that I like understood in that moment. I'm like, oh my God, everything is nothingness. And like the grandiosity of that understanding everything is nothingness shocked me so fucking deeply that it traumatized me. It traumatized my mind. I was so frightened and afraid. I'm like, what does that mean if everything is nothingness? Like, it was too big of an idea I mean, like, you can understand it on the level of mind, like, ooh, everything is nothingness. But I'm talking about the deepest core understanding of what that means, that God itself is the nothingness, that God itself is the platform, the source, foundation on which everything is built. Out of the nothingness comes the creation, okay? And I understood that, but it was terrifying for my little pea brain, my 17-year-old immature, degenerate little mind, for me to understand that. But it stuck with me. To this day, it stuck with me that I could understand something so profound, that I could tap into something, see it temporarily, so profound. And yet I had no history of studying, spirituality that I would do later. I would do that later after other stuff happened, you know? But this was the first little moment face to face with this absolute reality, the reality behind the reality, that everything is nothingness. What does that even mean? How can you even articulate that beyond those simple words? Everything is nothingness. It's like, you can't touch that. You can't hold it. It's not something for the mind to digest. It can't. And I would later in life, I would think back on that often. Like, what was the point of that? Right? What was the point of it? Why did I experience it in that way? And then and then later on, like I come to, and I not really come to, but like I'm kind of aware of what's going on now. Hey, Darius, you're like under the truck. Let's get you out of here. We got to go, and like my friends were freaking out because I was freaking out. They were worried for me. So one of my friends, Eric, calls his mom, and he has her come pick us up, and then we go to her place, and like I pass out. Like, I don't know if you can. I mean, I did. It was so intense that like I just shut down and like I fell asleep, like from the intensity of that experience, you know? Probably slept for like 2 or 3 hours, I don't know. And then all of a sudden I wake up and like I'm a little bit better, but still kind of feeling the effects of it. But his mom comes and picks us up. And like I'm in the passenger seat, you know, shotgun, and she's driving. And like out of this like very still place, I like turn and I look to her and I'm like, I want to fuck you. And I was, and like as a 17-year-old kid, like I had never thought that I would want to fuck my friend's mom. Like she wasn't particularly attractive to me, you know, like I didn't think she was like, oh, she's like the MILF, you know, that you kind of want to fuck. No, she was nothing like that for me, at least. I don't know about my other friends, but for me, I didn't see her that way. But like for some reason, unfiltered, this like just something I would never say comes out just like that. So that tells you the state of mind that I was in. I was just like, whoa, everything comes out, you know, whatever I think, it just needs to be projected out like vomit, you know? So I look at her and like, and she starts laughing hysterically. My friends are like, my friend's embarrassed, but like, he's also laughing like, what the fuck, you know? And so they know I'm totally gone. Yeah, I want to fuck you. Like, who says that? So then, yeah, we go back to her place and, you know, I go to sleep and then wake up. But the point of the story, obviously, is that everything is nothingness. Like I haven't said that enough times. But that was the first glimpse into the eternity of everything that I had. And it, at different times in my life, would come back and remind itself. And then later on, when I was studying these things and really like obsessively delving into the nature, because I just had to know, you know, like so much stuff had happened in my life. I had to know, I had to find the core truth of everything. I had to, I knew something was off. It was like Neo in the Matrix when he's like searching for the Matrix, and it's like, Neo, do you want to know what the Matrix is? Well, the Matrix is like this. It was like that for me. I was Neo looking for the Matrix, looking for the truth, for God. Something's off. I don't know what it is, but I know that everything is nothingness. So something, I mean, that means something, doesn't it? And so that I'm reading scriptures and I'm reading, you know, self-help books and spiritual books and all this different stuff. And then like I'm catching, you know, some stuff like that that's pointing to like the nothingness of it all. It's very Buddhist, it's very Eastern, this idea of the nothing. In the Western traditions, there's the somethingness. Everything is somethingness. You do. It's active. It's masculine. And then the Eastern has the more feminine nothingness, the meditative nature of life, you know. And then in the Western, it's like you must pray, you must contemplate, you must do good deeds, right? And so I had looked at the esoteric, the Eastern esoteric side of the depth of the root of the creator, the source. And it that carried me because I knew in that moment what I had experienced could not be taken away from me. You cannot tell me that in like, Darius, you were insane. No, motherfucker. I glimpsed an eternal truth. And like all of the extracurricular stuff that happened that night, yeah, I was fucking batshit crazy, you know. I wasn't in my right mind. But it unminded the mind. He lost his mind temporarily. It became, like Ramana Maharshi says, quiescent, quiet, still. And out of that stillness was this ravaging void of the nothingness. Ooh, you know? It was intense. It was wonderful. But like I said, it was traumatic. I wouldn't trade it in for anything. Yeah. So that experience stayed with me. And then A month or two later, okay, so this was New Year's Eve going into New Year's. This is like part two of the story, okay? It's like it's like, oh, you just got a taste of what this nothingness is. Now let's take it a step further, motherfucker. You want to fuck around with all these drugs and do this degenerate shit? It's not like it is degenerate stuff, right? It is stupid. Don't do drugs, kids, kind of stuff. But it was a part of my story. It was going to happen, you know? So, like a month or two later, it's New Year's Eve, and my friends want to have a sleepover, and we're going to do some LSD, some acid, and then we're going to like watch Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas and have some beers and do some shit, and like whatever. So we pop the acid and we're having a blast, and I'm not having a bad trip or anything this time. I never like acid didn't fuck with me like the shroom. The shrooms really like got acid was just like a fun little trip. I don't think maybe one time out of like the 5 or 6 times I did acid, I had like a baddish trip, but it was never like the shrooms couple times that I did it. But we take the acid. I think it was maybe a couple hits of acid each. There was about 4 or 5 of us again. It was like the same kind of tight little group of friends, like little druggy friends that we were. And like we're smoking weed and we're doing the acid. We're watching the movie. Ooh, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, classic like druggy movie, right? We're watching it and we're tripping balls while watching this shit. And it's fucking hysterical. But the best part for me comes later. My friends go to bed. I don't know how they go to bed because like whenever I would do acid, I was up. It was like doing coke or some shit. You're just like wired for me. But they passed out. And this was like, I want to say it's winter, so like sunrise isn't until later. It's not like 5 or 6 in the morning, so it must have been like 7 or something. And the sun's coming up, and it had been snowing, and there's just like this fresh snow on the ground. And I go to my friend's patio door, and they're all passed out, and I'm looking out at the sky, and it's like this purplish, pinkish, bluish sunrise. It's magnificent, and I'm looking at it. And in that moment, or maybe just before, my mind becomes totally still. Like the ego death, like they talk about, right? In spiritual books and stuff, right? I leave this conscious, conditioned me, Darius and his little story. I leave temporarily, okay? And I'm looking up at the sky and it's like, oh my fucking God, look at this. And it's not playing in my head like a thought, but there's just this knowing, the knowing beyond knowing that's coming in. And it's this deep understanding. It all makes sense. I get it. It all makes sense. And I keep feeling that. It's a part of me in that moment. Like I've tapped into me. I've realized the unrealized. The veil has been lifted and I see clearly in that moment. The same clarity that I have now after years of studying and suffering and awakening and suffering and awakening and doing all of this different shit, right? Years later, decades later. But in that moment, that clarity, holy shit, it was more profound than this everything is nothingness that I had experienced just a couple months before, because that was like short-lived. This kept growing, kept expanding. And I was like that for like a good half hour. I was like sitting in this like very peaceful, non-egoic state, non-conditioned self. And it's just like, whoa. And I feel this abundant energy, this blissful joy just coming out of me like this fucking fountain. It's just like, whoosh. And I am it, and it is me. Like Jesus says that I am the Father, I am in the Father, and the Father is in me. Like that kind of symbiosis of energies. And then after some time, the mind came back in, and now I'm 17, and my little pea brain, right? Like I was saying, my little degenerate pea brain is trying to make sense of the vastness of this understanding. And I can do this and I can do that, and I'm like, and I'm trying to explain. And I was a smart kid. Like I pretty well explained it, but it was just so off the wall. And I was so excited and exuberant and elated with this discovery that I just had to share it with anyone. And I'm telling my friends and I'm telling my mom, and it's like, like nobody wants to hear it. Like, what happened to the old Darius that was just chill and like whatever? Why are you freaking us out? So that leads to like this whole 2-week experience, what we'll call mania, right? So I spiral out of control. My mind is trying to rapidly understand and put to words this unwordable experience. And so 2 weeks later, after a bunch of shit happens, right? My family is like I have like I have these profound experiences for me building on themselves. And there's a lot of crazy shit. Like my mind is racing. I'm very grandiose, right? I'm full of myself because, hey, I know. You don't know, I know. I'm a 17-year-old know-it-all. So I get it. Let's just say I get into some trouble, and my mom like comes picks me up. She like slaps me. She's like, "Yo, like what the fuck is wrong with you?" And she takes me to the psychiatrist, and I get diagnosed bipolar 1. And I'm not having any of it. I'm like, "What the fuck are you talking about? Bipolar? What the fuck is this bipolar 1 shit?" And so that like that moment, it stamped me. I've been branded. And I had to live with that conditioned thought, that identity. I'm bipolar 1, and I never fully accepted it ever, honestly, if I'm honest. But as time went on, I had to try and manage it. And there were times where I would go off my meds and I'd take my meds, I'd go off my meds, I'd like be depressed, I'd be manic, and that's the thing with this bipolar stuff, is that it's different for everybody, but it plays out similarly for most. Okay. And for me, the mania, the hypomania that builds into a mania, and then eventually leads to a psychosis where I would spiral out of control, and a couple times ended up hospitalized, right? That's not the majority of my experience. That wasn't. 95% of my life was just depression. Different grades, different degrees, varieties of depression, some worse than others. The depression didn't get really, really bad until recently, to the past maybe 10, 15 years of my life. But I would have bad depressions, and then I was way more cyclical back then. Like I was popping off into mania, every couple of years or something. And then I would go into depression and come back out of it. But every time I had these manias, they were profound spiritual awakenings for me. And sometimes miraculous shit would happen. Crazy fucking stories I have, man. But so I'm labeled bipolar. I've glimpsed this eternal truth. And this label of bipolar, it's not sitting well with me. And I have to get to the bottom of it. I know everything is nothingness. It all makes sense to me. What is it? What is this thing that makes sense? And there were some truths that I understood immediately, like how love and fear works, how you embody love and fear, how in any given moment you can't be both. If you're in a fearful state, you can't compartmentalize like the love and the fear in your body. It doesn't work that way. So in any given state, you're either love or fear, and I got that because I was living it. And so sometimes other people's fear, because I had a tendency to make people uncomfortable. I'm too much. Darius, you're too much. Like, you're just bro, chill. You're too much. I was too much. And some, strangers, people I'd come across for a short time, they liked it because I was outgoing and eccentric and fun. But if I stuck around long enough, I would wear on you. And my family and my closest friends got the brunt end of it. So they're like, yo, we need chill, more depressed Darius to come back. He's more manageable. He goes and sits in his room and watches TV and shit and shuts the fuck up. He's not going on and on about these things that he's understanding and experiencing and doing weird shit. And so the mania, it would build, it would start out slowly later on, right? I'm not talking about this first time after the acid on New Year's Eve. I'm talking about later on at the few more times. And so for me, I've numbered them. I remember acutely every single awakening and mania that I've had. I've had 5 in total. That was the first one. And then I had 3 middle ones. 2 of them ended me up in the hospital. One of them ended me up arrested in jail, a branded felon. And then this final one, more recently, where I have taken the accumulation of knowledge and experience and depression and anxiety and fear and purged it. And now I have reached the more grounded, peaceful state. And so I still feel as blissful as I was and as manic as I was and as crazy as I was, but it's rooted now. It's grounded in me. I don't fly off the handle. I don't have this obsessive need to share it with everybody. I'm not doing crazy and fucking insane shit. Now, sometimes crazy and insane shit, it happens around me, but it's like God channeling through me. I'm not doing anything. Nobody ever individually performs a miracle. They happen around you. And so you become the conduit. You become the core light being carrying it around with you. So that first one, though, that first, I'm branded bipolar, because that didn't sit with me, I went on that journey to seek obsessively, to keep seeking. And look where it got me. it, it reminds me of my ex-girlfriend, because we were like, oh my God, Darius, you're such a catch. You're mentally ill, you're overweight, you're obese. I was 300 plus pounds. I still am. I'm 290 or whatever I am, but losing weight, now that I've balanced it out, I'm not obsessively addicted to food, which was the coping mechanism from the latest depression, years and years of it. Okay. You're mentally ill, you're overweight, fat, obese, you have no job, you have no formal education, some college, but never finished, never got my degree, no career, no money. You're such a catch. And we would laugh about it because she loved me for who I was and she knew I was the shit. I was cool. I'm a cool dude, in the most humble way possible. I acknowledge and love the loserness of me. I'm okay with it. It is in that humility, it is in that profound understanding of me just being like anybody else, without all the fucking superfluous labels that we put on each other. that we judge each other by. Oh, what kind of car do you drive? What job do you have? Are you somebody in the world? You know, you're somebody in the world. You're born, motherfucker. Of course you're somebody in the world. If you ever question why you're here, what your purpose is, why are you living, you were born. The isness of that fact, God wants you here. You asked to come here, to incarnate. You chose your life. Everybody does. And so why did I choose to have this fucked up life? To be mentally ill, to struggle for so long, to glimpse these truths, to have these severe depressions, to have these addictions, man. Like to live utter hell for years. To feel so lonely for so long because I had cut myself off from the outside world. Why would I choose that? Because, you know, you're like fast tracking yourself, man. The more hardcore shit you endure in your life, the more probability, the more likely it is that you're going to wake up out of it. Hopefully, if you like, you know, if the senses are alive, if you open your eyes and, you know, if you have ears, hopefully you can hear, like Jesus says, right? If you can pay attention, oh my God, like I feel like shit. Something must be wrong. But everyone's okay living their mundane, boring, depressed lives, too afraid to live. And I was that way too, so I'm not like casting shade or nothing. I'm just saying, I can identify with that. I feel you. I know what it's like. And I'm at least an example of someone that conquered that shit. I came out of it by the grace of God, but also choice. I chose to learn about this stuff, man. It was my passion. I remember when I was like in my teens, I was so lost. I was so like what am I going to do with my life? What is my purpose? You know how many times I changed my major in college? I was going to be an engineer. I was going to be an economist. I was going to like do this and that. You know, I was good at math and science. So like, you know, I could make some money being like, you know, a chemist or whatever it was, whatever I had aptitude for. But none of it felt right. I couldn't see myself in a cubicle, like being an engineer. Like I couldn't envision myself that way. And it's because God had greater plans for me. I had to go through 25 years, 26 years of damnation to come out the other side, to speak about it. And it didn't dawn on me that I was supposed to start a YouTube channel until like 5 years ago. Just like in like, you know, COVID times. I was like, oh, I'm going to start a YouTube channel. Like it just came in. But I didn't start it till like now. So it took another 5 years of me like working through my shit. Because I still had it. Like that depression that I was in, it had such an inertia. It was like moving the boulder up the mountain, you know? And it's slow going in the beginning. And you have to start like trying. There's some effort involved. That's your choice. That effort is, how do I align myself with God? It's very simple, but we overcomplicate it. How do I align myself? That is the choice that you have. Everyone thinks that there's like free will, and there's the illusion of free will. There's destiny as well, what you're meant to do. God knows everything. Do you think God doesn't already know what choices you're going to make? It's already planned out for you. Personally, subjectively, it's free will. Your own POV, you're living your life, you're making your choices. But God's the grand puppeteer. We're all just his little puppets, his little playthings, acting out the divine will. Even when you're not consciously aligned with God's will, you're still acting out his will. He allows it. He allows the suffering. He's in the suffering. Don't you guys understand that? How profound that is. God isn't only the good shit, man. He's also the evil shit. He encapsulates it all. Because he knows the flip side of the coin of your suffering is your salvation. And it took me a long time to realize that stuff, man. I was like, I need to find the good. I need to find the good and the purity and the truth and the humility. That was the last lesson, the humility. Oh man, the pride. And it wasn't like, 7 deadly sins, the pride, and like, oh, it's the aspect of pride that fucks you. It's the arrogance. Arrogance, hubris. That's the more accurate word. So to be grounded in the humility, to understand that you're nothing, to understand that you're just one little piece in the grand puzzle of everything that is, literally. This camera, the stand, the chair I'm sitting in, the room that I'm in, the city that I'm in, the world, the oceans, the mountains, the desert, the moon, the sky, the stars, the space in between, everything and nothing is God. The tiniest atom to the largest freaking mountain, to the most grand freaking vista that you've seen, the most beautiful. It's in sex, in lovemaking. The spark is there. It's everywhere. And so you can't say, oh no, the children suffering in Africa, the famine, the disease, the illness. That stuff is meant to be. The suffering is chosen by us. Even the little kid. It's like everyone wonders, like, why are there children that get leukemia and they die of cancer? Because there's people that are attached to the kid. It's for the child's development to come in, their soul development. It's for the parents and the grandparents and the cousins and the nephews and the nieces and all your families and closest friends. Everybody that touches that life gets an aspect of that suffering when they suffer. And then they have to learn those experiences. It's for their own growth too. It isn't compartmentalized, man. It's the magic tapestry that's interwoven into everything. So you can't, we're all connected, even if we're not aware of it. Consciously, you can only be aware of so many things, but subconsciously, unconsciously, back here, you're connected to the flip side of the fucking universe, motherfucker. The other side of the world in China, what that dude is thinking is coming into my subconscious, believe it or not. And when it trickles through, when it makes its way through, if it's designed and meant to trickle its way through the subconscious and make itself conscious, then it will, in God's own timing. He knows better than everyone. She, it, the goddess. Sometimes it's more accurate to label God as the goddess, the feminine, the creative, the sustenance. That's why the Indians, they're on the money with their shit when you look at yoga, but then you look at you have Shiva, the destroyer, and Brahman, and Vishnu, the different aspects, because they know that there's divinity in every aspect of life. But anyway, the point is that the vastness of everything that is it's all connected, okay? And so for me to sit here and think that I am just like the greatest motherfucker of all time, that's bullshit. You're nothing, I'm nothing, we're nothing. Yay, can we agree on that? Are we okay with that? Can we admit that? Can you understand that deeply and carry it around with you? Can you sit and meditate on it for a good hour or two? What does that mean, that I'm literally nothing? And that's kind of, you start delving off into the non-duality stuff. And there's a bunch of non-duality, Ramana Maharshi, Robert Adams kind of stuff, Rupert Spira, whatever. That stuff is great. You can go the non-duality route, but it's also like within duality, within the three-dimensional constructs of where we're living, the divine is there too. So don't go too far outside. Zoom out, okay? But then come and zoom back in and participate. Because for me, for the longest time, I was like, you know what, dude, like maybe this life isn't for me. I feel like I belong in some mountain somewhere, like just like as a monk, you know, in a monastery or something. And I had to reconcile that. And then I had Jesus's teachings that were like tugging at my heartstrings too. He was very important influence in my life. And it's not like, oh, Jesus is God and Jesus is like the Son of God and he died for our sins, all that fucking nonsense, because it is nonsense. That's just stuff that people added on afterwards to prop him up and put him up on the pedestal. The greatness of who he was didn't need amplification. We didn't need to like expand on his greatness. He was already great. And it's your job to sift through and make sense of what's truth and what's not. And it's very difficult to do it. It took me reading a bunch of different scriptures and religions and spiritual teachers, you know, and getting different slices of the pie and unraveling that slowly over time and being like, oh, it's like this, oh, it's like that, oh, it's not like this, it's not like that, but it's like this. That makes sense, that doesn't make sense. And even if I thought something made sense, you sit with it. I would sit with it for enough time that like, if I found examples that were kind of counterintuitive, that went against what I thought made sense at the time, I was very quick to change that. I was like, that doesn't fit, get rid of it. And you do that enough, there's only like a handful, a dozen core truths that everything revolves around, that everything builds on. And you can, when you see the clarity of everything, you can extrapolate stuff out very easily. You see through shit very easily. You read people, you read situations. You don't even like actively try and read stuff. You're not like computing, analyzing. You're not like that. You're not in the mind. Your intuition is so upfront that it's just surveying everything naturally and like you're checking in with it and like your mind has a thought and you're like and then you're checking in with your heart and your mind and your heart and your mind and you're going back and forth. What feels right? What doesn't make sense? And you reach conclusions and then they turn into beliefs. But keep your beliefs open until you've done enough surveying. But anyway, to go back to the whole beginning of all of this, the mushrooms and the acid and the spiral into being labeled bipolar, those truths were necessary. I had to see that stuff. I had to. And if it wasn't, so if you're wondering, why am I going through all these things? Why am I going through this physical illness, this mental illness, right? And it doesn't, you could be schizophrenic, you could be bipolar, it is there for you to use to wake you up out of it.